Grazing livestock and just grazing animals in general are a significant part of the planet. That really is the planet.
The average age of the farmer in America is 58 years old. That is not sustainable.
We've been hit with water curtailments. We've been hit with low prices by the conditions, by the rain, by the lamb crop, by the calf crop.
I heard a Native American gentleman say, wilderness, that's an invention of the white man, because we took care of this land.
Sometimes fighting doesn't mean shouting and screaming and pounding your fist. Sometimes it's just putting your boots on and being there for work the next day.
It is, are the American people fit to govern themselves, to rule themselves, to control themselves? I believe they are. My opponents do not. I believe in the right of the people.
There are cowboys still around. You just probably don't see them because we're working all the time.
I'm Keely Brazil-Cavallo, and this is America on One.
This podcast is brought to you by Ranch Vision, the software ranchers use to boost profits and make better decisions.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rich Brazil. I am the founder of Ranch Vision. This program was designed for producers like you. It's a unique, one-of-a-kind, forward-looking software program that enables you to see the results of your management decisions months and years into the future, from your herd numbers to your replacement costs, break-even values, enterprise efficiency, your profit and loss, your cash flow, and so much more. With this program, you can move forward with confidence into the future. Ranch Vision isn't a historical record-keeping program like all the other programs you might have seen. It looks forward. It is a very challenging, very competitive industry, and every ranch business is unique, has different variables, different opportunities, different constraints. Ranch Vision was designed to take uncertainty out of your future, to enable you to plan to profit. Please go to our website to learn more, www.ranchvision.io.
Once the dressed beef arrived in New York City by rail, it was stored in giant refrigerated warehouses built by the meat packers or their captive wholesalers. From there, it was distributed by horse-drawn wagon or cart to butcher shops and grocery stores. In this heaving metropolis, the best place to try dressed beef or any other kind of beef, indeed the true popularizer of the great American steak, was the trio of restaurants known as Delmonico's. The original Delmonico's was the creation of two brothers who arrived in New York City in 1823 from an Italian-speaking canton in Switzerland and opened a chocolate shop on William Street in Lower Manhattan. After their store burned down in the Great Fire of 1835, they turned their attention to restaurants, employing a new concept of fine dining known as a la carte, which featured menus and a wine list presented in a formal setting, an approach only recently introduced by the French. The concept was so successful in Manhattan that by 1860, a nephew of the two brothers, Lorenzo Delmonico, had expanded into 3 superb venues, and these restaurants became internationally renowned. These are some excerpts from a book called Cattle Kingdom by Christopher Knowlton. It's about the history of the beef industry in the American West, and really, it's a very recent history. And everybody who came up with every aspect of the beef industry as we know it today, from how beef is raised, to how it's shipped and refrigerated, to how it's served at restaurants and the cuts that we eat, all of it. This was all thought up by innovative people who had a vision, who had courage, and who brought their ideas to market and changed the industry, the world, the way we eat as we know it. My guest today is a guy with a big idea. His name is Justin Pettit from Santa Carota Beef in Bakersfield, and he's come up with a new beef product, a premium product, grass-fed, but graded prime because he finishes his cattle on carrots. It's a really unique concept. He's upcycling food waste, but he's run into some issues. Like any innovator, like any rancher, anybody in the Old West, in the frontier, he's run into struggles along his journey. Right now, he is in the middle of a lawsuit with a major processor based in Commerce, California. And I just want to add a disclaimer up top that everything we talk about is alleged. This lawsuit is ongoing. These are all allegations. I did reach out to the processor to ask for their comment. They haven't gotten back to me as of this recording. But we do know that ranchers today face challenges because of consolidation farther down the line in the supply chain. Secretary Rollins just last week
held a press conference giving an update on the current DOJ antitrust investigation into the big four meat packers that control 85% of the beef industry in the United States. So these struggles are very real. On one hand, Justin's story is an example of both the deregulation that we need to pursue so that farmers and ranchers can get into the industry and stay in it. Also, the enforcement that we need to protect farmers and ranchers from monopolization. There's laws on the books like packers and stockyards from the 1920s that aren't currently being enforced, which has led to possible market manipulation, price collusion, those things that we're seeing right now. But on the other hand, Justin is an example of the opportunity that still exists in the American West. It's something I talk about all the time. The West is still unwon. This is still America. There's so much opportunity out there. Anyone telling you that you can't build the life of your dreams or make your vision a reality in this country is either lying to you and or selling you something. I firmly believe that. And Justin is a modern rancher who's navigating the system as it is today to create something new, to create opportunity. It's the kind of innovation we want our food system to be free enough to accommodate. If you want to try carrot finished beef, you can check out santacarota.com. Follow him on all the socials at Santa Carota. I will link everything in the show notes. Here's Justin. I'm here today with Justin Pettit from Santa Carota Beef in Bakersfield, California. Justin, thank you so much for joining me.
Keely, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, let's start with you. Tell me about growing up in Bakersfield and your family's story, how you got there.
My grandfather came out during the Dust Bowl era. He was at the tail end of it. They were from Minnesota. They arrived in Bakersfield, I believe, in 1940. And they were very poor. He lived in a tent till he was 12. His parents couldn't feed him, had to leave the tent. And he ended up getting picked up in what he calls his adopted father. And this old cowboy took him in. They had a horse ranch in the mountains. They were legging up horses and eventually turned it into a cattle ranch. And, from there, they ended up with a place in town. My grandfather was a fireman. My dad was a fireman. My brother and I used to fight forest fires. And it was about the late 80s, he tried to buy a stack of hay from Bill Bolthouse. If you've seen like Bolthouse Farms, the carrot company. And the hay was grown with their wastewater. And they were just a small carrot packing plant at the time. Bolthouse said, well, what can you do with these cold carrots? And by the way, would you like to grow the hay with our wastewater for us? So we ended up, I remember being like 3 years old on an old three-wheeler irrigating hay fields in the middle of the night. And we had cows in the back 40 and sometimes the gate would get left open. And we were all just small farmers and ranchers trying to figure it out. Well, eventually the baby carrot was invented and the carrot processors grew and our ranch had to grow. We purchased and leased ground around the carrot facilities. So Grimway Farms is also in our hometown. So we've positioned our ranch 8 and 10 miles from essentially the two biggest carrot producers in the world. And we tried, anything from old cutter cows to whatever we could get a discount on at the sale barn. We eventually grew a cow herd of our own and we were backgrounding our own stockers. And that worked for a while and we kept doing it and still do that to this day. But about 10 years ago, my dad and I, who's my partner in Santa Carota, we were making bred heifers because it was a drought situation. Cow herd numbers were low, not as low as they are now, but low. And we saw an opportunity to where when no one else had feed, we could feed these heifers and big fields, a couple thousand acres to 1,000 acres down to a couple hundred acres. And we could work with it that way. Well, the loser of it was the ones that didn't get pregnant, didn't get bred. And we'd heard of guys, finishing cattle in the past on carrots. But once you kind of get past that 1,000-pound range at the time, the feedlots really didn't want to mess with them or you would have to take a discount. So it was like the point of no return. And we tried like 12 of them. And the first one we harvested was on my birthday in April in 2017. We're like, wow, this is good. It's light, it's juicy. We got something here. And luckily I married into produce marketing. My mother-in-law sells those cotton candy grapes with the grapery. So we got to borrow their marketing team. You don't get a second chance for a first impression. And we looked at what other folks had done when they tried to integrate, and they all go out and sell their steaks and they end up with freezers full of ground beef. And that doesn't cash flow because you can make anything into ground beef, but you can't make anything into a ribeye. And we kind of led with that. And so we went out and found a great burger customer. They had multiple locations in different states, and we had a dry aged burger on their menu, and they loved it. And our goal was, we had a great relationship with this restaurant group, Eureka. Our goal was to eventually grow into be their exclusive provider for all the burgers on their menu. Because it's like high-end, high-class bourbons, craft beer, craft bourbon, craft burger. And so it really fit as well, because as we got into moving our ground beef, we had to find a home for steaks. So that plugged us into some Wolfgang Puck concepts. It plugged us into the Wynn in Las Vegas. The Wynn came out and did like a 3-day photo shoot on the ranch and loved it, like a bunch of chefs, cowboys hanging out. It looked like a fancy branding, like kids riding around on horses and, great food. It was awesome. And the gal who wrote our story for the Wynn magazine, she sold it to Food and Wine magazine. And it really started to take off. Went from, selling at a loss to break even around the beginning of 2020. Finally turned our first small profit, and then COVID hit. And we had to start all over, shut all of our restaurants down. And yeah, it was brutal. But we did good things through that. I remember my dad was real concerned in the beginning of COVID when no one knew what it was about the frontline workers in the hospitals. And so I called the local radio stations and said, hey, I want to cook for these people. Can you distribute to them? So I had like 40 guys in our barn at 4:00 in the morning cooking beef ribs, because we had a bunch of those, and we made beans and salad, and we made dinners, and we had all these vans from the radio station distribute to all the different hospitals, and we were sending meals to them every night. And
you were just donating that beef?
We just donated it. Our beef,
Wow.
our time. Look, everyone wanted to help, and it was like coronacation for some people, that school teachers and whoever that didn't know what to do but wanted to do something. So we did that, and then we got towards like the fall of 2020, and Newsom started opening restaurants back up, and we had like all these cattle on feed. So we're like, oh, right on. So we started harvesting cattle, putting them in a box, and then he shut it down again. Do you remember like don't go to Thanksgiving and like
Oh yeah, it was
cancel
awful.
all your stuff? It was horrible.
It was horrible. I was trying to get married around that time. So I vividly remember our weddings getting canceled and how chaotic it was, and talking to folks in the catering business who were just like, we are hurting. It's so frustrating to have no idea what the future holds. So as a supplier, you were right in the middle of that.
Right in the middle of it. Now we have all this meat that's in a box. It's got a shelf life and nowhere to go with it. We even, towards Christmas, I was on my way to the cold storage, had enough of this. I loaded up the back of my truck, and I just started driving around and helping, just donating a box of meat to anyone who was open under protests.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I
That's
got the
amazing.
idea. I got the idea because Chef Andrew Gruel, he did a burger on his menu that all the proceeds went to help restaurant workers, because those are our salesmen. I mean, you want the chicken or you want the steak. Those are at the end of the line, our sales reps, and we love them for it. And so I saw that he worked with one of our distributors that we love, West Coast Prime Meat. So I called West Coast. I'm like, hey, I've got all this product in the freezer, this trim, let me donate it for this burger. And so we donated, probably around 10,000 pounds of meat for that. And just to try to help them out, and otherwise it was going to go bad. So we get to like December, and I load up my truck, and I just start, driving around and like, hey, thank you so much. Well, I shot a video about it, and people started like saying, hey, check out this restaurant and that restaurant. Well, the ABC, the Alcohol Beverage Commission, they were going to these restaurants that people were posting about and taking away their liquor license for being open, because it was like the only thing that they had on them. So then people had to like DM me, they had to email me, and we did it for a few days, and the outpouring of support got so big that we ended up bringing pallets of meat out to the barn. And I prayed over it. I did a little 5-minute chat and sermon about fishes and loaves, and had a dispatch list, and all of our friends came and like made sure as many restaurants as we could got covered, just to help them out, to show our support.
You're kidding. Wow.
No,
That is incredible.
It needed to be done. Like, people were just tired of getting bullied and put down, and somebody had to do it. And, if not me, then who,
Wow.
So
That's amazing. How much beef do you think you gave away?
shoot. We end up donating whatever we're long on. Like, the beef ribs are the cheapest stuff, So when I say pallets, it could be something very inexpensive to a barbecue location. We had, like, if product doesn't grade, Choice or Prime, some of our oddball select ones that do. I mean, we're verified grass-fed, and we still are able to grade choice and prime, which is very rare, but the carrots help us do that. And so like the select stuff, we'll donate one here and there for fundraisers. The 3 big times were COVID, the 2 COVID ones, and then the Palisades fire. That was bad. And Chef Andrew Gruhl, who's a friend of ours, he made like a distribution center down in Long Beach. And I was out in Texas for my daughter. She has special needs, and so we get really good treatment for her out here. And I called my dad. I was like, I can't get meat there for a week with the supply chain. Like, I have some in a cold storage in Texas or down at the packing house in Southern California, but we have some in Bakersfield. What do you think about literally loading up pallets of meat in the back, clean out a horse trailer, load it up, and haul it down there? And he did. Just drove down through the fires and showed up, and the chefs just started unloading meat and cooking it as fast as they could because they had all these evacuees to feed.
Wow. Chef Andrew Gruhl is in Huntington Beach, right?
Correct.
Yeah, he's very vocal on X, and he's amazing. So you were partnering with him. I remember when he did that fundraiser, we were all dropping off food at his distribution points and trying to get it to the evacuees and firefighters in LA. That's incredible. I'm sure you donated more than all of us put together.
I mean, it was product that we had. It was in the freezer. It was going out onesie twosies, and it was going to be discounted. And so we were long on it because of this lawsuit we're in with our ground beef. When we had to increase production, we had a bunch of extra steaks and like nowhere to go with it. So we try to, if that's our tithe, then so be it. We wanted to do the right thing.
That's amazing.
We had our neighbors loading up like diapers and, clothes and anything they could in the horse trailer. Like, hey, you have room for this? And literally the night before, they were just loading up around pallets of meat in the horse trailer.
That's incredible. And since then, we've learned that none of the organizations that said they were helping the fire victims were. So leave it to the rancher in Bakersfield to take care of everybody.
My granddad used to say, look, sometimes when you have a fire, you don't just call the fire department, you just grab a shovel and put it out, And we kind of feel that way. Like, if no one's going to go after this, then we can do it. And anything we can to help through all of it and all of our journeys, whether it's our customers that rely on our beef for their health issues, if it's autoimmune or their histamine sensitivity, celiac, we've also made a pediatric therapy center in California that helps kids with special needs. We have a foundation that helps pay for it because insurance doesn't. Just as much as the food system has failed us, I feel like the healthcare system has too. And so sometimes you just got to pick up a shovel and put the fire out. And our goal is to leave the world a better place than we found it.
Wow. Let's talk about your products really quick, because you mentioned that you have customers who have special dietary needs. For someone who's never heard of Santa Carota, what does carrot finishing actually do to the beef? What does it taste like? How does it cook differently? Tell me a little bit about your product.
Absolutely. Carrots are about 85, 90% water. So call it 90%. And for round numbers, if a cow's going to eat 10 pounds of grain in a day, it's got to eat 100 pounds of carrots to get the same 10 pounds of dry matter. And all that extra water and carrot juice, it fills up that muscle tissue like a water balloon, and inflates it and it stretches it. So stretches it like elasticity. And when you eat it, man, it pops in your mouth like a berry because of the juice, and you don't have to chew it so much because it's been stretched so many times. And the cows absolutely love it. I mean, they come like running off the hills for it. You can check it out on our social media. Like they love it. And so we feed a little bit of grass hay, that's the Sudan grass. We feed alongside of it. The Sudan grass is actually grown with the recycled wastewater from the carrot plants. So we've created this giant closed loop model of how to get rid of food waste. Like, Grandpa's pig farm in the back, you'd fed the slop to, but we actually upcycle this to make this premium product that you feel really good about. The B vitamins in it are higher than conventional because of all the carrots. You don't feel like you need a nap afterwards. And so we're really proud of it. We're verified grass-fed because of the carrots, but we still grade choice and prime. So
you mentioned that's very impressive.
We're very proud of it. The crazy thing is, it was under our nose the entire time. Like my entire childhood, I grew up playing in a carrot pile. Little did I know we had this great product. So you know what? If that's God's timing, that's God's timing, and here we are. But the chefs love it because of that. Carota in Italian is carrot. So like our Italian restaurants are like Carota. They love talking about it. We've done some podcasts with Italy. They're like a really cool, like a grocery chain that is a lot of like high-end Italian stuff. And man, those chefs go crazy over it.
Oh, well, when Italians like your food, you know you're doing something right.
Oh,
And you were on the
yeah, right?
menu. Yeah, absolutely. I'm married into an Italian family, so they're passionate. They know what they're talking about.
Brings a
You
family
are
together.
exactly, exactly. You were on the menu at the Wynn, you said, also Hell's Kitchen, Wolfgang Puck, you're feeding the LA Lakers, the Pittsburgh Steelers. How did those relationships happen? I mean, that's some serious clout. Your product was clearly making a name for itself.
Yes. Man, by the grace of God. So we found another distributor that plugged us into the Win. And the way I heard the story, because they were one of our first big ones, was that JBS came in with their Grass Run Farms program and they put that on the menu. And then they did this like across the board nationwide price hike. That is how you piss a chef off, is let them print a menu and price it out and then raise the price to where they have to redo a menu. And meanwhile, we were just showing up at this other distributor's door and we kind of got ran out of there. They're like, beat it, kid. And 2 days later, I get a call back like, hey, what do you think about looking at the Win? Like, really? Okay. What's the volume? And it fit our harvesting model perfectly. And so we plugged into the Win and Bakersfield, especially our ranch that's on the east side, we're 4 hours from Vegas. So Vegas got to say they were prime, they were grass fed, and they were local. That's really hard to do out there in the desert. So we clicked with Vegas very well, especially before COVID. Word just kind of traveled. Everyone wants the next best thing. You've seen like what Wagyu was done. They want something different. I think for so long that, Budweiser was the king of beers and it was just a standard. And then craft beer came along and just exploded in the market. And we're this craft burger concept or this craft steak concept. We're craft beef. And the chefs wanted to get a hold of it. And it checked the boxes for everyone. It's healthy. It tastes good. It's got a great story. And we'll show up at the restaurant and talk to anyone you want. I think the world wants to buy their steak from the guy in the cowboy hat. And there's a big disconnect from that. And I love it when ranchers show up and represent their beef. It's very hard to do with the supply chain, but when we do it and people know that boots on the ground are still out there trying to give them, that's your anniversary dinner. That's a special occasion. And we should be proud that we worked so hard to get it to you, and you should be proud to support it. I think it's a great cycle when it's done right.
Man, I'm just thinking about it. Those chefs and restaurateurs must have absolutely loved working with you, as opposed to, I assume they're normally working with some middleman in a suit, but you're the guy actually out there raising beef, and they get to talk to you. They get to talk to you in your hat and your boots and coming out of the truck, and they get to talk to the person that has handled the product every day of its life. That must have been really exciting for these guys who are passionate about food and their menus.
It was exciting for us too. I mean, you get to get dressed up and go tell about it. I think in today's age of, podcasts and social media, and if there's a beef label that doesn't have, their own social media, then they're probably hiding something. It might be the best marketing in the world, but my oldest son loved it. He likes the silver belly hats and the sport coats and the Michelin restaurants. And so he would love going on sales trips with me, and we'd spend a couple days and he'd learn our story. And I remember one time we were in San Diego and we went anywhere from butcher shops to restaurants to fast casual that wanted to use our skirt steak. And we were chatting about it at the end of the night. We're in the hotel lobby and having dinner. And this guy grabs us and he's like, "What are you talking about? It sounds impressive. How old is this kid?" And he was like 10. And I said, "Luke, pitch him. You heard like 10 pitches today. This guy you're not it's win or lose or anything, right?" And so he learned the story so well that he could talk to folks. And it was really cool. My youngest son, not so much. He'd rather sleep in the dirt and ride his horse and just be the cowboy, but that's all right. I have a well-rounded group of kids.
Yeah, you need all kinds in a family business.
Absolutely.
You need everybody doing their part.
Absolutely.
So at your peak, when you're really cooking, you have this amazing product, word's getting out. What did the operation look like day to day? What was your life like at that time?
So I was on a computer more than I've ever been in my life. I learned how to build spreadsheets and fill orders and purchase orders. I learned how to pack cattle, which I didn't go to school for. I fought fires with a chainsaw. So this was It was a learning curve, and I think it's hard for anyone. And to make a load of cattle or multiple loads of cattle just flow through and cash flow was very tough. And then when we were shorthanded and need big cow work projects, 2 times a week, I was horseback and I would go, I'd help those guys, or I would go buy cattle to help fill more orders. We were working with auditors for all of our claims and how to go through USDA and our boxes to make sure that what we're saying is correct and that the cattle that we are supplying match all the labels. And I was a one-man show. And the packer we worked with, I absolutely loved. One World Beef down in Brawley, California. They pack Brant beef, and they bought an old national plant, and they had enough cattle for about 3 days, or they have enough, 3 days to fill the plant. So the other days they would bring in guys like us to fill the rest of the days. So you get access to a transportation team, you get access to all their data and their yield reporting, and they do an amazing job. And then from there, we would get purchase orders from distributors. And then I would be able to look at my daily inventory and build out what I wanted to send to our distributors to fill the orders. And then from there, they would go to the restaurants. So we built this supply chain, which is very tough. It's like, I say, it's like getting on a freeway going 80 miles an hour, but you're on a bicycle when you're a little guy. It's really tough, but we were able to accomplish it, and we were really proud of it. We even built an e-commerce program, and I found that one because I wanted to sell our steaks online. Everyone asked for them. And I was down in like Katy, Texas by Houston. I was watching my nieces for my brother. And I looked up this company that, they were called Frozen Logistics. So I emailed them, and like 30 minutes later, I got an email back. And they said, well, the owner said, if you can be in Round Rock, which is just north of Austin, if you could be there in 2 hours, it's about 2.5 to get there, come on down, he'll meet you. And I loaded my boys in my truck, drove there, and they are building this cold storage in the middle of a cornfield, and it's designing it to be fully automated, pick and pack, to fulfill orders just like ours. And I was like, wow, this might be a God thing, So once they launched, we were able to start taking some of our product, cutting into individual steaks and individual burger, and get it to, everything was done in California. Then we would get it to Texas, already, flash frozen. And then from there, it's like the middle of the country, and you can hit, 48 contiguous states within 3 days of dry ice. At one time, we were on Amazon with them. So, I mean, we built a pretty cool supply chain, which is very tough to do in the beef industry.
I mean, any one of these things is very impressive, and you did them all and at the same time. That's incredible. And you probably had a lot of D2C customers, because you mentioned folks with food sensitivities like your product. Can you tell me a little bit about why that is? What do they get from your product that they don't get from beef off the shelf?
Wow. So this is just kind of learning their testimonies. We've had one of my first ones we got, it was literally like a whole animal program we were doing. And this lady came in and said, my son he's got special needs. He's very sick. I can't get him. All these foods make him sick. And the salty old butcher, he's awesome. He gave him a couple pounds of our beef and a few steaks and said, go home and try this with him. I got a Christmas card from this lady that said, you saved my son's life. He was putting on weight now. He loves your beef. And it saved his life. One of our distributors, West Coast Prime Meats, one of the owners had a grandson who couldn't eat grain-fed beef, and some grass-fed was just really tough on him. He didn't like the flavor, and he sent him our beef as much as he could, and that kid loved it, absolutely loved it. They just posted about it a couple weeks ago on one of our threads. And then we've met some people along the way with like histamine sensitivity. So when you try to get like a direct from the farm, it's really tough because the smaller processors, they'll hang an animal for, 2-3 weeks, sometimes a month. And then there is a bacteria in there. That's what the dry aging process is. It kind of breaks it down. Well, that will ruin their gut. But because we process it at a larger facility, so if we harvested cattle on like Thursday morning, they hang over the weekend, and then Monday morning we're packing them. So it's very minimal time, and they like less age on them for the histamine sensitivity. So we had to learn all this along the way. As people discovered us, we discovered them, and we would send them beef, and they said, wow, I feel great afterwards. Like, this is awesome. So I don't have all the scientific details, but I have a stack of testimonies of people saying, absolutely, what you're doing is incredible. Keep it up, because we feel good, and there's not a lot of food out there that we can eat.
Yeah, and just the fact that it grades prime, If you have to eat grass-fed beef, for a lot of my listeners are not necessarily in ranching or in agriculture. Most cattle in the U.S. spends most of its life on grass, but most cattle in the U.S. is finished on grain. So if you have an extreme sensitivity to that, you may choose to buy beef that is 100% grass-fed, grass-finished. But that taste, people don't always like as much. They don't like the marbling. It can taste a little gamier. If you can have a product that has that grass-finished label and it works with food sensitivities, but it tastes as good as it sounds like yours does, that's a home run. That's amazing.
Thank you. And we've had hurdles and challenges along the way, and we still feel like it's something worth fighting for. Yeah. I mean, we had the cartels show up and start growing, pot greenhouses on the other side of the fence, the not legal ones.
Wait, tell me about that. In Bakersfield that happened?
We've dealt with the fist fights, gunfights, train robbers, the whole thing, right? So the cartel one, they set up greenhouses in this like canyon, and it was on not our side of the fence. But like my kids had their little quads and they'd go by there. It's 4 miles from the neighborhood we live in to the barn, and they used to, kind of roam the ranch. So I didn't want them to be around that or part of it. We couldn't get the DEA or the sheriff to do anything. But my dad, man, he had this idea. The Bakersfield Police Department was getting their pistol range eminent domain. So he set these guys up a shooting range on our side of the fence so the cop cars could show up and just start banging away anytime they want. We have great friends with the police department now, and those other guys packed their bags and left.
No kidding. So you gave a little bit of land to the police department for a shooting range, and that's some cowboy ingenuity. I love it. That's amazing.
It's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah, for many reasons. Wow, that is wild. So you guys are the real Yellowstone, it sounds like.
We get that. We get that. We're faith-based, and we just, we get cowboy, and we've had the people on drugs show up on the ranch and have to fight them. We had, there's a big train stop where they switch shifts, and like the tweakers will go steal stuff off the trains, and we've had to run those guys off in a very cowboy way, and the whole thing.
I'm just trying to imagine what it'd be like to be in that situation, high on something, and to see some cowboys out of the Old West roll up on horses. That would be a bad trip.
So they would throw all the stuff off at night, and then in the morning they would, come back and get it once the trains left. And like in our life, my cowboys on a rainy day could literally like be down at the therapy center that we built, putting furniture together to do, exercises for special needs kids. And then on the way back to the ranch, like have to pull pistols and run these guys off. And that's Tuesday. That's just Tuesday for them, for all of us. So,
man, Justin, I started on one, and I named it on one because I felt like I always grew up with all these stories and people like yourself who are living these lives that you never hear about in the mainstream media. And when I started going to school in LA, and I met these kids who kind of have just been told the only way to succeed in America is the 9-to-5, the corporate route. And I thought, man, somebody needs to tell these stories, because kids today, there's a lot more opportunity out there than you would think. So you're a perfect example of that. There are jobs where you can help special needs kids in the morning and run train robbers off by horseback at night. That's good to know.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy for what you're doing too, because there's not a lot of people willing to come out and put their boots in the dirt and give us a microphone either, because their stories are everywhere, especially in California, where, the homeless population's just gone wild and people live in tents everywhere. And, I mean, on a simple note, just imagine if someone was trespassing on your property, shooting their gun. Now you have to go run someone off that has a gun. That happens to ranchers all the time.
Right. Yeah, and I've covered up north where I grew up. We have a huge problem with cartel infiltration, illegal weed grows, and it's a lot wilder and woolier in California than you might think. Once you get out of LA or San Francisco, it's the Wild West out here.
I say it's still Western out west.
That's right.
I came to Texas about 1.5 years ago for my daughter, and I got here and I was like, wow, it's peaceful. They already won the West out here. They did, and they do sports and they do rodeo and they celebrate tradition. But for the most part, like they won the West. And in California, I love your unwon. Like that caught me so well because I was like, wow, that's literally in one word everything that I've been saying. It is not won yet. It is still Wild West out there.
Maybe this is a California thing or a West Coast thing. We have to
Well,
deal with
yeah,
a
the
little
other
more.
side of the Rockies, it's still there, you know.
Absolutely, 100%. Do you miss California? How do you feel about
Every
being in
day.
Texas? Yeah.
I miss the mountains. I love the culture here. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I go back there probably 1 week a month to work on the ranch. My dad got sick a couple months ago. He has cancer and he's my partner and he ran the ranch and I, kind of ran the marketing and the sales side of things. And he started getting sick in October and
Mm.
I went back in December, helped him get everything branded and gathered and organized. And I came back for the holidays waiting on insurance for, it took a couple weeks for a bone scan, MRI. Well, he got a blood panel and they called and said, get your dad to the hospital. So I got back there January 3rd and it took the whole month to get him well enough to get to MD Anderson in Houston. So my brother lives down there and my dad stays with him most of the time, or he'll come up and stay with me. But I mean, it was like 3 hospital visits. We have a really good friend that said, hey, I have a plane and I'm looking for a reason to go to Oklahoma City. If you guys can be ready by this Thursday, I'll give you a ride to Fort Worth. And he still had like a midline hanging out of his arm. His antibiotics was like ending on Wednesday night. The infectious disease doctor said, well, I'm not going to pull the midline until I see your dad, but she was going on vacation. So we were supposed to just wait a few days. We pulled that son of a gun right in his living room, popped the staples out from his surgery in his leg, wrapped him up, loaded him on a plane, and away we went. And he hasn't been back since. And I go back a lot to take care of the ranch. We were back there. I was back in March for mediation for this lawsuit. And we had to preg some heifers and, get as much done as possible as we can. And then I'm going back again in 2 weeks, week and a half, and I'll be back there for a few weeks to, get everything else pregged, weaned, all the stuff, get the cows up to the high country and just trying to keep it going. We're surrounded right now, but that's all right,
You really are. The first time I spoke with you, you were at a physical therapy appointment for your daughter. So you guys are really going through it. Your faith is the main focus every time we talk. You've led with that and in COVID and all these other hard times you've led with that, but now you're really living your faith out.
Man, if on one end, if we don't fight for transparency in the food system, what happens to the next rancher or innovation that comes along? A premium product that just gets, cut, demolished, whatever. If not us, then who? And so we're not just standing up for us, we're standing up for everyone else that can bring something more to the beef industry. And as far as our faith, man, I've wore the floor out with my knees and I'm okay with it. I've met a lot of great people along the way that have stuck with me. And if we can inspire them to do good things and big things and bold things, I mean, bold prayers make bold miracles. And I don't think we can have a testimony without a test. And we just keep getting hit with them. But I mean, God put you in our lives and now we have a microphone and we get to tell the world about it. And if we could glorify God and look, we're going to win this. We are absolutely going to win this. And we're going to show the world a miracle of what happens when you never give up. You don't just march around Jericho 5 or 6 times and quit. You just got to see everything through. And, that's kind of the cowboy mentality anyway, right? Like you never give up. You don't leave your cows out on the forest. You never give up. You come home with your cattle or you don't come home at all. And I feel like we're going to see a job through and we're not going to half-ass it. So that's the way we started. And I don't feel like we're going to switch horses in the middle of this race.
Your partner, you mentioned Eureka. They were your largest customer, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So Eureka restaurants. And at some point orders started dipping with your processor. Are you okay naming the processor in your lawsuit?
Yeah, it's a public trial, right? Like you can get on the internet and say, is Santa Carota in a lawsuit with a large meat processor? So we had a dry aged burger on Eureka's menu. And our goal was to set up with them as their exclusive provider for all their burgers. And their usage was, 12 to 15,000 pounds a week, which that 12,000 pounds is a sweet spot of 1 load of cattle a week. So as you move the whole animal. And if we had to, we could throw top sirloin in there or short ribs in there. It was a 70-30 blend. And we could really do this because of the viscosity of the fat is very light from the carrots. It's not like that greasy stuff that sticks to the top of your mouth. We could use the whole animal, and we didn't have to mix other beef with it. I don't know, for some of your listeners, in the US, when we harvest cattle, that 80-20 is the real sweet spot for feedlot cattle. But there's extra trimmings left over that are like 50-50 or 65-35. And that's where they blend other product. They'll bring in like leaner, cull cows or Australian beef, or, Argentina is the hot topic right now. So they'll blend in other stuff that's like a 90-10, and it'll even out the 80-20. Well, that looks good on paper, but some people are not super happy about that. But for us, we could use our entire animal, just like if you were going to harvest one animal at your local butcher shop. And that was very beneficial to us. So coming out of COVID, because Eureka shut down to like 5 locations, takeout only, we were able to really, as they opened up, jump in and open back up with them was the goal. And they contracted with this meat grinder called Sterling Pacific Meats. And so the way it works was Eureka would order from whether it's Cisco or US Foods, because they'd use both of them. Those orders would go to Sterling, and Sterling, based off those orders, would order from us. And there was like a week or two lag in there, but we kept the supply chain moving. So we would get our orders from Sterling. And we were doing really good 2021, 22. And then 2023, I'm like, wow, we're opening like 3 restaurants a year right now, and our orders are just going down. I mean, we went like over a month with no orders from them at all. So when that happens, now we have like Hell's Kitchen, who's wanting their filet mignon or whatever. And do you harvest cattle and just keep stacking, the trim for Eureka in the freezer? And we had to make these decisions constantly. So we had to like stop harvest and just tell people, hey, we're catching up. It was really tough. And so we started losing our spot on menus in 2023 as our orders really dipped. And finally, I had a PO get canceled. It was like right before New Year's in 2023, and they said they found product in the freezer. I'm like, no way. So I reached out to Eureka, and we were actually going to look at putting some of our steaks on their menu for like steak salads or appetizers. And I was down at their headquarters, and I started chatting with them like, hey, is there anybody can get some numbers from you guys? And it took a week or two. They sent me how many pounds that they had ordered for 21, 22, and 23. And I knew how many pounds I'd invoiced for, and the math did not math. We were way off. So I confronted Sterling about it. And when I called him out on it, the orders immediately went back up to like 12, 14,000 pounds a week. So then we were harvesting cattle like crazy, right? We were doing a load of cattle every other week or every third week. And then it just jumped, and we had to take care of this. And because having that perfect flow, and it wasn't Eureka's fault, from what I understand, they didn't know. And so to just stay with it, I'm like, hey, we started harvesting cattle. We were trying to keep up. When we got into lighter cattle, we were like grinding up ribeyes and strip loins just to stay in this thing. We were able to borrow some money. I mean, millions, right? To buy more cattle to get out in front of this. Cattle are not cheap. And it really wasn't quite enough. We held our own all the way through 2024. And then the beginning of 25, we were harvesting cattle that weren't ready yet. So at a loss just to service debt. And we said, this isn't doing anybody any good. So we shut everything down. We put what we could into the Pittsburgh Steelers training camp, and the rest of it into our e-commerce program. And from there, we opened a lawsuit, and it's just been a uphill battle ever since. We went through, getting it set up and started in discovery, and we had mediation in March, and did not look promising. They just dug their heels in. And so that's when we were working cows that week too, because I'm trying to get mediation and then all my cow work done. And we were gathering the trap for this set of cows we had. And Amy, who does our social media and our, pretty much everything, marketing and our customer service, she's absolutely awesome. She was horseback because I need help, and we wear a lot of hats where we are. And I said, hey, I have a cheap little microphone. Let's shoot a video. And I had started a GoFundMe that morning because this is going to be a billing bonanza on the attorney side. So I said, let's shoot a little video. And so we stopped, shot a video, and we posted it that evening, and it just started gaining traction. I had to get on an airplane the very next day, and it was really taking off. I reposted it and tagged Secretary Rollins. Within 48 hours, she got back to me. Like, Gruel was tagging her, everyone. And I was like, I need some help. I just need to know that there's something out there, someone who cares. And she got back to me. She's awesome. Her chief of staff is awesome. Her whole team is awesome. And they work very hard. I don't know when they sleep. But I had a conversation with her probably like a week later. Her legal team is looking into this for us, and they're wanting to help. And so we'll see what we get done. I still have faith in, from David and Goliath till now, I still have faith that the truth will prevail, and we're doing God's work and we're on God's side. And thank God for this administration. If there was ever a time to win in food transparency, and, this is it. And we have the right people in place to do it. And so I'm very grateful for that. I'm very, very grateful for folks like you who are willing to tell our story. And we'll see what happens. But I know we're going to win. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we're willing to go through the wilderness for 40 years if we have to.
The stat has flown around quite a bit, but a single pound of ground beef in the United States can contain meat from hundreds of different animals. For you, Justin, for your product, you have a premium product, a very unique product, a unique way of feeding your cows, and unique way of finishing. That was not the case. Your product was coming from your ranch, start to finish. But you had a supplier that you believe was undercutting you, cutting your product with who knows what. And if you hadn't had that close relationship with your buyer, you may have never found that. So it does raise the question, how often is this happening? And I think for people who don't understand the beef industry, let's just talk really quickly. Walk us through what happens from harvesting a cow and a burger getting served on a plate at a Eureka restaurant. What's every hand that product passes through from harvesting to eating?
So for us, we have our own cows and calves, and they would go on our program. And then we would also buy calves from our neighbors or other suppliers. We had to get them set up with the ID chips and the audits to make sure that all of our claims are correct. So there's a big conversation, and I'm going to peel off a little bit on it, Keely, but about the RFID chips in cattle. If you want to have a claim on your box that's USDA approved label, whatever that claim is, you have to have an audit for it, and it has to be approved by the USDA to go there. We would either, source by program cattle, that's what we call them, the ones with the RFID chips, or we even got some of our neighbors and other ranchers that really believed in us to get their herd audited and get them programmed. And so we would source their cattle and their calves. Then they would come onto our ranch. It's not a feedlot because we still use barbed wire fences for these pens, right? Like, you don't have to clean them. The cows can get up on a hill and be a cow, and trucks get in there and just dump carrots and turn around. So it's a free range concept. And the cows spend, roughly 6 months on carrots there, some a little more, some a little less, depending on how big they came in. And once they're ready, we determine that they're fat or they're ready to be harvested. We were doing about a load a week, which is, 35 head, 40 head. We would set the trucks. We'd have to send the paperwork in to make sure all of the cattle, every single one of them that have like a barcode, were approved for our claims. They weren't, previously doctored or anything like that. We would send the paperwork in ahead of time. Once they're approved, we would have the truck set ready. They would go down to One World Beef, our packing plant. It's an awesome place, like Temple Grandin facility. It's so clean, you could have surgery on the floor of this place. Very proud to be part of it. From there, they would be harvested. I would send in like an off-all report. So if I wanted to keep the tripe or the intestines or anything like that, then for us, if not, they have a sales team that will sell it for a commission. That's usually towards the end of the week, and the beginning of the next week is when I have to have all my packing instructions in. So do you want bone-in ribeyes or boneless? How do you want your strip loins packed? How many to a box? If you put 4 to a box or 2 to a box, it's got to be different codes. So we get all of that to them. And then from there, the following day, we get our inventory put out. So do I want my trim in combo bins? Do I want it in boxes? And that was kind of a thing with Sterling too. We were trying to move combos, but then when they stopped, they would skip weeks and we still had to fill orders. We'd have to box the trim and pay extra to put it in a box and freeze it. But so once we have it up on our inventory, then we would take our purchase orders from all our different distributors and we would fill it off of the inventory, book it to the transportation team. And from there, they would go out on pallets to whoever's selling it. So that's kind of the supply chain that we handled all the way through. I feel like you can taste the difference in a single source ground beef versus a blend. For anybody who's ever had, known single source, whether it's one cow or, 1 cow times 35, it's a thing,
Yeah.
So that was a supply chain we built out. So Sterling was one of them. We only did the ground beef with them, really.
So explain Sterling's role in that supply
So
chain.
they would send a purchase order of how many pounds or how many combo bins or cases of trim that they needed to grind for Eureka. Once I had that, we would harvest cattle based off of that. As soon as that uploaded to our inventory, we would send those to them. All trim has to be checked for E. coli. So we have COAs, a certificate of analysis. Make sure that's negative. That goes with the truck. From there, they would bring it in and they took possession of it. So we were on the menu at Eureka's restaurants. You could Google it, Eureka menu 2023, and you'll find that Santa Carota is our supplier and Eureka's menu is an exclusive. They thought that they were getting all Santa Carota. It would go to Sterling. We never really got to see what happened behind the scenes. They say you don't want to see laws and sausages get made. I think ground beef is kind of under that umbrella, and that's kind of where, whatever happened. I think it happens a lot. I do. I was talking to Chef Gruel about it because he was using our meat. I'm like, hey, there's a thing happening right now, and this is what we believe to be true. He said, man, you know how many times that you'll see white sea bass on the menu or Chilean sea bass and it's tilapia with some sauce on it? Or how many times do you think that if someone wanted Santa Carota steaks for their wedding and they needed, 300 pounds of New York's, but 200 pounds were mine and 100 pounds were someone else's, but, oh yeah, we're serving Santa Carota tonight. I think it probably happens more than people think. And what really, I had a thought the other day concerns me is like a certified Angus beef program. Like what happens if, if there's 10,000 pounds ordered for certified Angus beef, is it all 10,000 pounds or are some people doing 7,000 and mixing 3,000 of lesser product in there and keeping the margin? It's hard to get into. And this is the loophole that a lot of these, what they call Class B processors have access to.
Beef is the most decentralized aspect of agriculture, in my opinion. Imagine what's going on in the pork industry or the seafood industry, all these other industries where you don't have so many individual ranchers raising cattle on grass up until they hit that finishing stage. So it's a real problem. I think that there's just not enough protection happening in the supply chain for our men and women on the ground raising and growing our food. They're falling through the cracks, and that's why we're losing so many of them.
We're losing them, that's for sure. A lot of the kids don't want to stick around. The next generation, they're going to the cities. Maybe they see the fight that we're in and it's not worth it. For so long, it wasn't even profitable or wasn't that appealing. We were the bad guys. Just recently, we got the food pyramid flipped over to where it should be. Everyone's saying steak causes cancer and all these bad things. We have been the enemy. Why would anybody want to stick in that industry? But now, you have like GLP-1s coming out where people are actually craving protein and carnivore diet. And we see all these people are getting healed from red meats and proteins. So we're the good guys again. And now we're supposed to go rescue our accusers. And it's very tough. And we're losing a lot of the generation that could actually do something, because I think the younger generation has access to supply chains and AI, and they know how to use technology and social media. And now's the time to shine, but it feels like it's almost too late. But I don't think so. I think it's like in a wrestling match, you could be losing all the points, but a pin will win. And I think that we're turning the tides. I think the Western culture's coming back. I think beef is sexy again. And this is kind of like the darkest before the dawn, but I'm starting to see, rays of sunshine coming up.
Well, you mentioned Secretary Rollins reaching out to you. I mean, that would not have happened under our previous ag secretaries. Just whatever you think of Vilsack, whatever. That would not have happened. I'm sorry. That just did not happen, where the ag secretary would reach out to somebody on Instagram expressing an issue they were having, an independent farmer or rancher expressing need for help, whatever it might be, you would not have heard from the ag secretary. So that shows
And to
her
call me
heart.
on a Saturday, just to pick up the phone and call me on a Saturday and say, I'm willing to help and let me hear your story. Okay, we'll do what we can. And here's my chief of staff. And then from Saturday morning and then Saturday afternoon, I talked to her chief of staff. She's amazing. And the whole team has just been so great to work with. And I'm not saying they like pulled any strings or anything yet, but they literally operate within the limits of the law. I don't see anything. I appreciate them not doing anything dirty, whether it benefits me or not. They literally said, this is what we have to offer, and then, but by the way, here's our legal team. So let's let them stay right alongside of you. And if they need to feed you guys any information from packers and stockyards, for us, because it's not the packer who did it, it's really tough. This is like a FSIS labeling issue.
Right.
So there's so many loopholes in these labels. And I mean, look, if we're the ones to uncover this thing and, blow it open, then so be it. Hopefully it gets dug into and we get through all the corruption. I was talking to the chef, David Walzog. He was at the Win when we were there. He was telling me he's with Chef's Warehouse now. And he said, man, all these chefs, they don't want anything repacked. Like the short ribs, sometimes they'll break a seal. Nope. Box in, box out. I don't want to see the glue ripped off of that box because the restaurants do not trust anyone anymore, And what I mentioned earlier about like, call it the Certified Angus Beef Program. What happens is like you're taking a premium product, say it's a $5 product, right? And the restaurant thinks that's what they're getting. The customer thinks that's what they're getting. But when they blend it with a $2 product, they're not getting what they ordered, the restaurant or the customer. And then that $2 product got passed off as a $5 product and it never hit the market. So that happened with us. Whatever they mixed in because we're a premium, that cheaper product never got to hit the market, and the American people don't benefit because they didn't have access to a cheaper beef. You see these beef prices going up. It's not one exact thing. It's like everywhere. I think it's death by paper cuts, and the American consumer is just paying for it.
Do you think that these laws that are designed to protect ranchers, designed to keep the food system transparent, do they need to be updated for current realities? What kind of regulations do you think need to be passed to address what you're going through with your processor?
Yes, I think there needs to be more audits. I think with today's technology, how many pounds in, how many pounds out, you can have, AI builds software to monitor how many pounds in and pounds out. We're not having two different sets of books and shuffling of paperwork. So I feel like technologically we've come past the point of the old switcheroo, and that we can watch things all the way through. It would help with recalls. It would help with what's happening to us. So I think audits, and then look, if there's probably laws already there, how come we're not enforcing them? Look at the Packers and Stockyards Act. There is a few things in there that we could look at. The problem is the lobbyists. We don't have lobbyists. Everything just funnels to the NCBA, who is taking care of the big four. Ranchers are still paying Checkoff money. They're forced to pay Checkoff dollars to market beef, and the money's going to the guys that have chicken businesses too. So what's the point? And so if I buy cows from someone to put on my program, they have to pay to market beef in general, but I have to have a marketing budget, and it's like they're fighting against each other. I don't think we need to do that anymore. I think we need to have a real conversation, almost like take this thing apart and put it back together again.
Explain what beef checkoff is. A lot of people don't know this.
So a checkoff program is where every rancher has to put like $1 in for every animal sold, and that goes to marketing beef. And I've never really liked it because it's almost like taxation without representation. I think it's been decades since we heard Matthew McConaughey do a beef is what's for dinner commercial, right? Like, where's the money going? We've outdated that, but it's still something that has to be, you have to pay this every time that you sell an animal, just like a brand inspection, which is fair because brand inspections were actually following where the animal came from for traceability. The checkoff is just a mandate that the lobbyists put in, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but when they implemented the beef checkoff, beef consumption went down. So I was talking to Sean Baker about this last year at a carnivore convention, and he's so against it. And he said, look, we should be promoting beef, but instead, since beef checkoff got implemented, we went through all the negative publicity, and it did absolutely nothing for the industry.
Well, and the big four packers, we always talk about the big four, Tyson, Cargill, JBS, and National Beef, they pack 85% of all beef processed and sold in the United States. They don't pay into beef checkoff. It's the rancher that's paying into beef checkoff, as I understand it. So you guys are the ones whose dollars are going into marketing beef, but most of that money is going to organizations that most ranchers feel are not representing them. National Cattlemen's Beef Association, NCBA, is the big one. This is not my area. You guys should check out Lonesome Lands with Shad Sullivan and Jim Mundorf. They talk about this a lot, the issues with NCBA as a representation for ranchers in DC, how they're not always representing the little guy, the rancher on the ground. They represent the packers, they represent the feeders. That tends to be their focus. There's a lot more money at that consolidated point, but ranchers are still paying into the checkoff program. And just like you're saying, Justin, well, for example, Sean Baker, he is a very well-known influencer. I doubt he's getting any checkoff money, correct?
Correct.
Nobody's coming to him. Nobody's paying him to help promote beef, even though he's doing it for free on social media constantly.
Yeah, he has to fundraise for his own projects. But the NCBA, the ranchers are funding their marketing budget. It's like, oh, we never have to worry about a marketing budget because the ranchers just keep the money flowing in. Every animal that's sold and every time it's changed hands. And some of these animals, for like the supply chain, a cow-calf guy can sell his calves to a stalker guy, that raises yearlings. And so now there's a checkoff dollar. Well, then the yearling guy owns them. And then when he sells them to a feedlot, there's another checkoff dollar. And so on and so forth. And every time these cattle are traded hands, they've another dollar goes to the NCBA. And we kind of stay away from a lot of it. We stay away from some of the politics. As you can tell, we do our own thing and don't get involved with the groups and whatnot. But it is annoying that, when we buy cattle, someone is paying to market beef that's not ours when we are paying a premium for these cattle.
Right. And NCBA does get most of that money. I just checked. It's something like $40 million a year.
For $40 million, I think we could probably increase the United States grass-fed output by 10%. I'm serious. Like, we have enough capacity using a food waste to, I think if you look it up, it's like 230,000 head a year of USDA grass-fed harvested animals. We could do 25,000 head a year. But we built this Ferrari and we're walking down the road with an empty can of gas right now to no fault of our own. I mean, we did our best. We got our premium. We went by the book, and this is what happens because I feel like ranchers are the most honest people in the world. I mean, you buy cattle just by picking up a phone. It's a handshake. But as soon as those animals get the hides pulled off of them, man, we've learned it could be a dirty, dirty, corrupt business.
Right. That's so true. And the fact that we have this surging demand for beef, it's not really because of those checkoff dollars. As far as I can tell, this is totally organic. This is just people like Sean Baker or yourself talking about the benefits of beef and educating the public, and public kind of waking up to, yeah, maybe I don't want soy as my main staple of my diet. Maybe my grandparents were onto something, in the way that we've eaten for all of human history wasn't so bad. It doesn't seem super connected to those beef checkoff dollars that ranchers are paying into. I don't see NCBA at the forefront of this, to be honest.
No, I don't think they do anything anymore except protect the bigger guys, and they were consolidated before. And honestly, I think the best thing we could do is everyone needs to just keep telling their story and keep telling their story until our voice is louder than theirs. They might have the politicians' ear, but right now, this administration is cleaning house on a lot of the people that are getting paid off. So now's the time. We have some momentum, and I think we just need to keep, for Secretary Rollins to be that accessible and for you to be this accessible and to have a microphone. I think everyone just needs to keep telling their story. And the more they do, the more people are going to learn the beef industry and learn where they get their meat from. Because like I said, people want to buy their meat from the guy in a cowboy hat. Well, you can do it now, and you don't even have to do right there table side. You could, social media, you could talk about it, and people want to know what your trials and struggles are and, what happens every day. I mean, a cow gets his head caught in a gate, how do you fix that? What do you, because ranchers are like welders, they're plumbers, they're equipment operators. We have to wear hats for everything. And no one gets to see that on a day-to-day basis. But the more we show them and the more we tell our story, the more I feel like they'll realize that the guys growing their beef are good guys.
So tell me about, you filed this lawsuit in May 2025, and mediation happened on March 17th. That was very recently. They're bigger than you, obviously. They're a big corporation. Do you get the feeling that they're just looking to dig their heels in and outspend you at this point? Is that what it felt like in the room?
Yes, it did. We've had to switch attorneys, find someone that's contingent. So that way we're not just bleeding out hourly. We're going to have to pay a lot more in the end to settle on a percentage. But we're still in the fight, and whatever happens happens, and I know that we're going to win. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we've had to do things along the way that we didn't want to. We lost a 10,000 acre ranch that we had leased because we couldn't make the payment on anymore. We've had to sell property. We're just selling cows right now. Our calf crop is still going to pay old bills from ranchers and carrot bills that we owe. And so it's been pretty detrimental. I sold my house to live on the proceeds while we hunkered down, and we had to sell another piece of property I signed for today. And I feel like it's just the ranch is just depleting inch by inch, but we've come this far. Like I said, we're not going to march around Jericho 6 times and quit at the end of it. Some days it feels like we're getting Jobed, is what I like to say. Like I feel like Job lost everything and he got it all back in the end. If we didn't have our faith, I don't know what else we'd have.
If your allegations are accurate, which, decision is pending, but what you're alleging against Sterling Pacific is very serious. And if we don't protect our farmers and ranchers, they're going to get eaten alive by these corporations that are becoming increasingly powerful and increasingly consolidated. And whether Packers and Stockyards is directly applicable to your case or not, it was passed in the 1920s to address this issue because this is an ongoing thing. You have a farmer, the average herd size is 50 head in the United States for cattle. So you have a rancher with a small operation selling cows. The big guys down the chain, ranchers are totally outgunned. That's really what happened to the American pork industry. Used to be that you could make a lot of money as a farmer by selling some pork. That was a great cash crop, so to speak. And that industry has been completely overtaken by Smithfield and these giant vertically integrated pork farms to the point where I don't really like eating pork if I didn't, if I don't know where it came from. I always say beef is, to me, the most ethical and healthy form of meat. U.S. raised beef is the best thing that you can eat if you're looking for animal welfare and environmental impact. I think beef is the best product you can eat, but it falls apart when you don't have laws in place protecting ranchers. This law in the 1920s was passed when there were the big 5. There were 5 packers at that time that controlled the industry. Now we have 4. So that law is not being enforced the way it should. As new opportunities come up, as the beef industry changes, now you have direct to consumer. You guys can sell directly to your end customer online, which you're doing. And I want to make sure to share where folks can buy from you. But there need to be laws that grow up to protect ranchers and farmers as the industry evolves.
And that's hard too. The direct to consumer thing is not easy. Now you're a shipper. Now literally you have to learn about dry ice and FedEx and UPS, and that's very hard. What the big guys have is they have access to these giant grocery chains. They can plug into the Kroger's and Vons and Safeway and Walmart or whatever. The MCool, I don't even know if it moves the needle at all. I mean, right now, if you went to go buy a bag of grapes, it's going to be from a different country. People don't even look at that. If it does, then, right on. In a perfect world, I would love to see all of the independent packers and processors make their own label or box, if it was like United Stock Growers Association. Now you have a USA Beef. It's got standards, almost like a co-op or a union. And then you could really tackle some of the bigger contracts and then start taking over the market. I think that we're going to have to think bigger because even if, I might sell some beef online, I don't know how much market share I really took from some of these bigger guys. We're going to have to think bold and big because they're bold and big.
Just having more of those options and more transparency there, that seems like another way to help fix what's broken. Because if people have more education about where their food is coming from, I think that will lead to them looking for things like MCool. They want to know, not everybody, sure. Like you said, there's a market for cheaper beef, but there's a lot of people who do care where their beef comes from, I believe. I think there's people who care where their produce comes from, too. I think, seeing grown in the USA, if you're sitting there at Whole Foods looking at 2 options, I think a decent percentage of people, especially younger generations, and there's been some market studies on that, will choose the product that's grown domestically.
I think the education of it's wonderful too. There's just such a disconnect from our food anymore, where people used to know the seasons of tomatoes and know the seasons of strawberries. Like I know when Watsonville's running, and I know when if not, I'm probably getting my strawberries from Mexico, right?
Right.
Something about beef though is like an animal from another country, you have no idea what their harvesting conditions were like, guys going to the bathroom that are still cutting meat, going in and out of there, what the cows are eating, something with grass with kangaroo poop on it, right? Like, we don't know. And the Made in America product of USA labeling that Secretary Rollins just accomplished, I think that's wonderful. At least we know now, and people can't use the product of USA just because it was ground up here. I mean, they were bringing in container loads of frozen trim, grinding it in a U.S. facility and calling it a product of the USA. I mean, what is it, like 85% of the grass-fed beef in the U.S. isn't even from the United States. And so we've been tricked so long, and now there's this disconnect. And I think the more we can educate people on where our food comes from, the seasonality of it, that's in and of itself a win right there.
Yeah, totally. In your opinion, there's been a lot in the headlines lately about Trump importing beef from Argentina. I don't think people realize that that's status quo. That's been happening forever. That is not new, right?
Argentina uses like 75% of their own beef. I think
but just importing beef in general is not new.
No, it's not new. And it's very minimal. And we do it because most of our beef in the U.S. is finished on corn or grain. And so you have, like I was saying earlier, that you make your 80-20s and then you have these 50-50s that,
and that's fat content.
That's lean to fat. And so they have to bring in leaner meat to blend with it. And I don't hate it, right? Like I would rather see a family that, is really cost conscious or on a budget have access to any kind of beef than none at all. So we don't want to price the entire market out of this thing. So I don't hate it. The Mexican border thing, that one's a little trickier because even when it got into the MCOOL, it's like, well, if an animal spends a third of its life or half its life in Mexico and then the rest up here, is it a U.S. citizen or is it a Mexican citizen,
Right.
But the border's shut down. Like, now, if you're going to do MCOOL, now's the time because you don't have that gray area, right? It's like either it was harvested in a non-USDA harvesting facility or it wasn't. Period. End of story. So I think now's the time for that. But as far as the imports, let it happen and let the market call it out.
Yeah. So the border's shut right now, for those who don't know, because there's a concern about a parasite called New World Screwworm. NWS. So that's the reason why the southern border has been shut to live animal imports for, I think, over a year now. I don't remember the exact date that they shut it, but it's been shut for a while to protect the domestic cattle herd here in the United States because NWS is very contagious and it's a big, big problem. Ranchers who saw life back in the 50s, 60s will remember it was horrible from what I understand, from what I hear. So the USDA did a great job eradicating New World Screwworm in the 70s, and it's gone. We had a buffer zone in Panama and everything north of Panama. We had no issues with New World Screwworm. We worked with Mexico to keep it south of that line. Under Biden, that line was erased, and we saw New World Screwworm in Mexico again. In northern Mexico, it started getting closer to the border, and that's when Secretary Rollins shut the border down to imports to protect our herds. So the argument for a long time, as I understand it, correct me, Justin, if I'm wrong, but the argument from a lot of folks in the industry has been we can't have mandatory country of origin labeling or MCOOL because we do get so many cattle just south of the border in Mexico. It's kind of a blurred line in Texas and Mexico, and the cattle that go back and forth there. And a lot of processors don't delineate what came from Mexico, what came from Canada, what came from South America, and what came from the U.S. when they produce ground beef. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of different animals that can go into a pound of ground. So they argued that MCOOL was too difficult. And I guess just my observation, why is that a problem? I guess I just don't have product of the USA on your ground beef or say product of Mexico and Argentina and the USA or whatever. Why is truth in labeling such a massive burden? Why do ranchers have to deal with all of the hurt and then they don't even get to put a label on their product at the end of the day that says, hey, if you buy from me, this came from the U.S. And you can have confidence that if that's something that matters to you, pay a little bit more for a domestic product. I don't really see the harm in that personally.
There is no harm in it. There should, why they did that is beyond me. I mean, they were blending it. Because they got away with it so long, and then now they want it, right? They threw the baby out with the bathwater too, as far as Mexican cattle. Look, we can have that conversation another time, but whole loads of frozen meat that just get reprocessed and repacked, get, the product of USA stamp, that's wrong. That should have never happened. And I'm glad we have a USDA that's addressing it and dealing with it, and it's about time. And I think we should just make as much progress as we possibly can to do so.
Yeah. So, folks, that another point on that. Before this year, before January 1st, 2026, if you saw product of the USA label on beef, that didn't mean that it was actually a product of the US. It could have been a product or beef animal that lived its entire life in Mexico, and then it got shipped across the border, processed minimally, and then got to have that label slapped on it. Do I have that right, Justin?
Yes, that's exactly right. And then the screwworm, man, I think we have the technology to beat this thing back pretty well. I know there's a lot of scare tactics out there. I think doramectin is like an ivermectin cousin. It treats it pretty well. And I like the sterile flies, what they're doing. I mean, I hate flies, right? So if they can breed them out of existence, go after it. I love that. I think if and when they open the border back up, Mexico's building their infrastructure right now to finish their own cattle. They're bringing a lot of our corn down, crossing the border going south. They're finishing their own cattle. I don't think you're going to get that 1.5 million head that we used to get once this thing opens back up. I don't even know if there is a 250,000 head sitting on the border waiting for this right now. I think everyone's just learning to deal with it, and we are addressing fraud in our beef industry and trying to get prices lower, and Mexico's trying to figure out what to do with their steers and if they're going to end up finishing them. It's sad for the folks that did build an industry and rely on it. I know they just lost a big feedlot out in Lubbock. That's really sad to see, but look, everyone's just playing the cards they're dealt right now. I pray for the entire beef industry across the board, and I hope that we're all successful and that rising tides can raise all ships.
Yeah. Yeah. So for you right now, in your case, what do you think the take home is for other ranchers? How do you think your case could help the industry as a whole?
Everyone's going to want to see us win in this, right? They want to see the underdog. They want to see David slay Goliath. I hope that my case proves that, if you have a God-sized dream, you got to follow it and chase it, and that justice will prevail in the end, and that we still live in a, liberty and justice for all kind of a country. I want them to know that this administration does have their back. As horrible as what has been the last, 4 or 5 decades, I think we're turning the tide here. And that for the rest of the industry, we're in the driver's seat right now. The country is craving protein. The food pyramid is now flipped upside down to where we're the good guys. We know that red meat, beef, is like the most sustainable product that you could live on for the rest of your life across the board. This is our time. So don't quit now. If you are going through any problems or struggles, we know we've got equipment inflation and labor issues. But I would say to anyone out there, just hang in there, because this is our time, and tell your story. The best thing you could do is never give up and tell your story. You're not complaining. You're not whining. You're just telling people how hard it is out there and how hard you're working for them. And I think when people realize how hard we're working for the American consumer will realize that, sometimes beef is expensive, but it's always worth it because they are supporting the American rancher.
Yeah, if you need any reason to buy beef right now, I think Justin's story is a perfect example. Most ranchers are folks like you. You're giving back. You care about your product, your animal, the environment. It's absolutely wild that beef has been treated as the bad guy for so long. It could not be farther from the truth. It really is one of the most positive stories in agriculture, the way that beef gets to your plate. For you guys, what does life look like right now? You're in Texas, you sold your house, you still have a ranch in Bakersfield, you're dealing with a lot with your daughter's care, with your dad now. Tell me what operations are like for you guys.
Man, we're ground down to a halt. We still have our cows and calves. We did some Wagyu crosses, some F1 crosses. We'll keep those on. We're selling out of meat. Right now, we're focused on selling what we have left in the cold storage online. It's been wonderful. Once, we started telling our story, the outpouring of support has been absolutely amazing. My dad's, 4.5 hours from me right now. He's staying with my brother. I was down at MD Anderson 2 days ago for appointments with him, and I'd bring him up for like a week sometimes between his chemo treatments. I've got his old horse up here and one of his dogs. So my brother takes care of his physical health and I take care of his mental health. This week we're going to spend going over everything on the ranch. This is my first year doing it without him. I'm glad he's around to coach me from afar. It's still a big ranch to run. We still worried about wildfires this summer. We have 3 employees that live on the ranch in different parts of the ranch, and they're doing a great job. Some days they've had to skip paychecks until we can sell cattle, and our vendors that were selling us cattle or feed before, they've been great in working with us, and it's been tough. You get tired of the bill collectors calling and knowing that you can't pay them until you sell your next calf crop. But in the end, we're fighting the good fight, and we know that what we've built is worth fighting for. And I think about the people every day that our meat helps to sustain, and those especially with medical issues and all the good we've done along the way. And I know that we can do a lot more good in our future. So if it's driving back and forth across the country or jumping on an airplane and getting there and working cows, fixing fence, checking your waters, make sure everything's fine, and then getting back to check on my daughter and my dad. I'm stretched thin right now, but it's better than being bored. I'll tell you that.
For the next few years, as you look toward the future, do you want to get Santa Carota back where it was? Do you have a different vision for where you want to take the business now? What is your dream for the next phase of your operation?
My dream is to grow this thing to its max capacity. I mean, we were harvesting 2,000 head a year at our peak, but we could do 10 times that. I would like to bring healthy beef to the schools. I'd like to bring it to the military. I bet since you and I started this podcast, I've had 25 emails, people from restaurants and people wanting whole cows and half cows and people wanting more of our beef. And we're about to sell out, and I have no idea how I'm going to replenish it. I don't have cows on feed for this. I think we're going to rise from the ashes. There's no reason, well, there's a lot of reasons to quit, but I don't think we're going to buy into any of it. I want to see this thing all the way through, just like we set out to do. This is our baby, and I want to watch it grow.
Is your hope that Sterling comes to the table and sits down with you guys and works this out so you can get back to business?
So I couldn't sleep a few nights ago, and I opened my Bible and I was like, man, I was just praying. I wanted to hear from God, and I ended up in Matthew. I ended up in Sermon on the Mount, and I think it was 5:25, and it talks about handling your quarrels, and if an adversary sues you, you need to try to settle this as fast as possible and don't drag it out. And that really kind of reassured me, that yes, we're the ones suing someone, but I want to get it behind us. I don't want to make a big, I don't need to go all the way to the trial because I'm going to live on this. I would settle out right now if we could just kind of get our bills paid and enough money to get started all over again. I'm not scared to start all over again. I've been knocked on my butt plenty of times, but my goal is to sit down, get it behind us, and pay the people we owe who've been more than patient with us and start all over. I hate lawsuits. I hate dealing with them. I want to grow healthy cattle and really grow our business. I'd rather be an entrepreneur than someone that's stuck in a courtroom all the time.
We talked about how the West is not one, at least not in California. Your story reminds me of those early settlers who came out and started the beef industry and began seeing the opportunity for growing cattle in the American West and made it work. And they had to figure out how to truck that beef on a train before refrigeration back to New York to the fancy restaurants, back before they even had set menus, back before restaurants look anything like they look today. They built that from the ground up, and there were people who built the West as we know it, which I think the West is kind of the first thing America as a country made, because we were imitating Europe when we got to the East Coast. But by the time we expanded out West, that was our identity. That's where we built who the American is. And that's why if you're in Europe and you see a cowboy hat, you're looking at an American. That's an iconic image of what it means to be an American and what an American stands for and what that American spirit embodies. Whether you've ever driven a truck or ridden on a horse in your life, you have stake in that birthright and in that spirit. And folks like you, Justin, are carrying that forward to a new generation, to a new world of opportunities, to new customers. You're rebuilding it, because what used to work may not work for the future. And the type of demand that people have now, that railroad hasn't been built yet. You guys are helping to build it. You're helping to create a new supply chain, a new way of reaching your customers. They're sick of the middlemen. They're sick of the lies. They're sick of the, discrepancies in labeling and all of the importing that we got through globalization in the 90s, they want to get back to the farmer or rancher. They want to have more connection to their food. Just because they're not growing it and they may not know someone who's growing it doesn't mean that they don't care. I think that there's a lot of people who want to rebuild that connection back to their food, and you're helping to do that. So I see you as like a modern example of those original pioneers who created the West as we know it today. You're dealing with new challenges, and it's inspiring to see you do that.
Thank you. I hope my kids want to see that too. You know, I don't ever want to let them down. I don't want them to see their dad quit. I hope our story is that, you know, the true winners in life never, ever give up, ever. And if this is an endurance thing, then so be it. If that's God's path for me, then that's what it is. If we have to reinvent the beef business to stay in it, then so be it, because we are blessed to be cattle raisers. We really are. This is a lifestyle that we should be grateful for, and I thank God every day that I'm in it.
Amen. How can people best support you right now?
We still have meat that you can buy on our website at santacarota.com. If you want to help with some of the legal stuff, we still have old legal bills, and we're trying to survive, keep our employees going. We have a GoFundMe set up that's on our social media, and it's on our website as well. So we do have some delays right now because of just the outpour of support, but we would love for people to try our beef. That is my favorite thing to do, is watch someone try Santa Carota beef for the first time, because you can taste the difference. You really can.
I'm going to link everything, so you can just go to the description of this episode. So you can follow Santa Carota Beef on Instagram, on all the socials, check out their GoFundMe, and make sure to buy and support them. I want you to get back up and running so everybody can try your product. It sounds amazing. I love what you're doing. We didn't even get into the upcycling, the fact that you're turning food waste into an amazing premier product. It's just an incredible story, and whatever I can do to help get the word out. And I'm sure a lot of folks listening feel the same.
Well, thank you so much, Keely. Thank you for the opportunity to tell our story.
Thanks for your time, Justin. Appreciate you. And please, you guys, do check out all of those links. Follow Justin, support him, and support the American Rancher and its newest itineration.